Welcome back to Tranquility du Jour, nourishing conversations about living a full and meaningful life with doses of tranquility. This is episode 544. I'm your host, Kimberly Wilson, bringing you tranquility through this medium since 2005. Today, I'm connecting with you from Portland, Oregon, and my guest is my partner, Tim Mooney, and we're chatting about our journey, spending a few weeks on the road with 2 pugs, 1 dropped at camp grandparents, and our adventures so far. So delighted to be here with you.
I'm delighted to be here too. We're in Portland, Oregon, Rip City, the Rose City.
What does Rip City mean?
It's a basketball thing.
Oh, that's why I had no idea what you were talking about. I'm like, what are you saying?
Pour one out for the Trailblazers. They just got eliminated.
Oh, great. I guess. I don't know. So this journey, it's kind of funny because it seems like, it just happened, meaning we just kind of sprung it on, and it kind of did. So once we were vaccinated, we were like, it would have been fun to go somewhere and spend like a month working from afar. But of course, we never felt safe doing that during the pandemic. So once we got vaccinated, it's like it all came together quite quickly, don't you think?
Yeah, the origin story of this was as soon as I and this is the longer version. Kimberly knows how obsessed I was with scheduling my vaccination shot.
Yes.
There was a spreadsheet, there was color coding. It was a thing. But after I got it booked, I started writing down the things that I wanted to do after I was vaccinated. And it was just this whole list of things that when you combined a bunch of them together, I had this weird idea of, hey, what if we did this gigantic road trip and worked from the West Coast, and Kimberly could time shift her hours, and our working hours would miraculously match. And that was sort of the beginning of it. And we would be able to visit family along the way, hers first and then mine, and then to be able to be in wonderful places where we would work during the day, and then we would play during the evenings and visit people if there are people to visit. And this thing came together. Oh, and also I got to scratch this weird itch of converting a ridiculous sedan, and this is a much longer story, but like converting a ridiculous sedan into a micro camper so that we could have like a little bed in the back to be able to like take little cat naps at rest stops and things like that, so that we could make the miles a little bit better. But that was sort of like all of these things came together. And so we're sitting here in Portland right now with two of our 3 dogs, and we're on this great adventure, and we've been successfully working while we've been going.
With bellies full of amazing vegan food.
Yes.
From Blooming Lotus.
Yes, Blooming Lotus, the greatest vegan restaurant in the world, at least as far as I'm concerned tonight.
That's what Tim, he was like, this is the best vegan meal I've ever had.
Like, legit.
But you know what is fun about this too, Tim, that I remember is like, we kind of got this wild hair and we're like, what do you think? Should we do this? Maybe we could go for a few weeks. And what was the first thing we did? We contacted my parents and we're like, if we brought Mookie to you en route out west, would you watch him? And it was going to be a couple weeks.
It was going to be like 2 or 3. Oh, no, we said a couple of weeks. Yeah, this is where I fudged a little bit. I was like, just a couple of weeks. And it was good. I think at that point it was going to be like 3 weeks and a couple of days.
But it was going to be 3 weeks too, because we were traveling to and from Oklahoma, right?
Of course.
So it's like, for them to have them would have just been like a little over 2 weeks. But then we were like, my birthday's into the month. Do we want to stay away on my birthday? Like, why do we come back on my birthday? And so then we added another week, and my sweet parents have had a quarter terrier, pug-ish animal.
And they are having a blast with him. They keep sending us photos of how much fun they're having.
Yeah, he loves watching the news with them, apparently.
Which is funny. But I think that it also was helpful because it bookended the 2 federal holidays, because the extra day off for Memorial Day and 4th of July just sort of made it all a lot easier and extended our stay. And it bought us an extra week and a couple of days on the California coast, which is really exciting. So
yeah, I'll be sure. I'm sharing photos over on Instagram, so definitely check that out. Mainly in the stories. So if you follow me, you'll see them there. And we spent let's talk a little bit about the route. So of course we got to Oklahoma in 22 hours from DC.
Yeah, that was about as fast as we've ever done it because of the setup that we had.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I drove 20, I think it was, I think you're right. It was 22 or 23 hours. And you drove a critical couple of them because I'm the night owl of the two of us. And I love driving and I hate being a passenger. So as a consequence, I do most of the driving, but we drove until sunup basically. And then you took over in Missouri. Is that right?
Yeah. I think it was.
It was after St. Louis because we got through St. Louis before rush hour. And then you took over for a couple of hours while I slept in the back, and you had slept overnight. And so you were fresh as a daisy, and I slept a couple hours, and then I felt great, and I was ready to finish off the drive. And so we got to your parents' place in
earlier than we thought we would.
Yeah, which was great.
Fun. Yeah. Yeah, so then we had a great couple days with them in Oklahoma over Memorial Day weekend. And then we left Mookie with them, and I cried as we left.
Which I predicted.
So sad.
Yes.
I did not expect that. I mean, I love Mookie, of course, but like to just be dropping him and see him watch us drive away was so
Somebody
sad.
has to be the third favorite pug. Let's just say that. For Kimberly, at least.
Oh,
they're all equally awesome for me.
Are all
tied for
awesome.
first.
They're all first in our hearts.
Third place for her. Just saying.
He's just a little noisy and he's big. Anyway, we love Mookie. But, since he and one of our other pugs, Gizmo, my favorite, fight at times.
It's always Gizmo's fault.
Always Gizmo's fault. It was one of those things where we wouldn't be able to leave them alone in an Airbnb if we were to go out to dinner that was not dog friendly. And also, he's noisy, right? And so it's as you're stopping and getting out at gas stations or rest stops or, anywhere, Mookie always has something to say.
He has the most aversion to change of all of the dogs. And on a trip like this, we're constantly changing things. And so it also was better for him to be in a static place for a while. And he really does love being back at the dugout in Oklahoma with the grandparents. So it was the right choice.
It was.
We also forgot, we got to give a shout out to a neighbor of ours for looking after Jackson for us.
Oh, yes.
Which was another huge piece of the puzzle.
Yes, we've got a beautiful neighbor who Jackson used to torture her and go to her patio and scratch,
like he tried to break into her house.
Paw at her door, meowing, going come play with me. Anyway, so she is staying at our house, not staying. She'll go over and work there during the days with her big, white, beautiful, fluffy dog and hang out with Jackson. So yeah, that made this all possible. Yeah. So Oklahoma, and then from Oklahoma, we drove to Seattle.
That was an interesting.
This was a journey.
Yeah.
So, whenever you think of okay, so what's been the biggest kind of challenge or struggle? Do you want to tell about so we say goodbye to Mookie. I'm crying. We drive away, and then.
And a little backstory right before that. The vehicle needed an oil change. Took it to Elgin, Oklahoma for an oil change. They did a fine job, but I was like, I think that my coolant might be a little low. Can you do a coolant flush? Because I thought that might be a good idea. And they're like, well, we don't do flushes, but we can add coolant to your vehicle. I'm like, awesome, great. And so I'm still a little unclear on the whole thing. I get back before we leave and I look at it and I notice I know about, and I'm making a gesture with two fingers very closely. I know this much about cars, almost nothing. But I looked in the coolant reservoir and it was full of pink coolant. And before it had been yellow coolant, which is the more typical one that I'm used to. I'm like, interesting. And I was like, well, I looked it up and apparently good coolant is coolant. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, we'll just keep going. Well, that was a critical mistake. As it turned out, the vehicle had, over the course of the couple thousand miles that we had driven, had burnt off most of the coolant. It was very low on coolant. And we were sort of driving the car with almost no coolant in it. And of course, the temperature was starting to spike a little bit, and that was no good. And what was worse was there was a driving rainstorm during all of this. And what I was noticing was that if I was up at a certain speed, roughly around 60 miles per hour, on roads that was perfectly fine, then the car would stay cool. Enough air was moving through it. But the rain was saying something different. And so we were going too slow. So we were constantly having to stop because the car would be like, I'm turning your air conditioning off. You have to stop. So the car would tell us to pull over, and we'd pull over. And then a minute or two later, it'd be like, okay, cool, you can go again. And so we would keep doing that. We probably did that maybe less than 10 times we figured,
Yeah,
but
couple hours.
enough that it was a thing. So at a gas station, we finally, through this monsoon
in Kansas, on dirt back roads.
Oh, but yeah, we were on back roads too. Even better, right? I get a thing of coolant, but of course the car's too hot to be able to open it up. So we keep driving, we keep doing it, and then we stopped at another place. And that was when Kimberly was like, I'm going to go to sleep. And I'm like, okay, cool. So we shifted the car around and let her sleep. And in that time, the car cooled off enough that I was like, let me try the cap. And nothing exploded. I'm like, awesome. But it was dry. There was nothing in it. So I filled it with nearly the whole thing of coolant. I turn on the engine. Everything's fine.
It was perfect.
Everything's fine.
Who knew?
And the reason was because we had almost no coolant in the car. And from then on, we drove straight to Denver pretty much.
Yeah.
On that. I played my hip hop music. My New Jack Swing is my new thing. For those of you who are into the New Jack Swing of the 90s, played a little of that. Kimberly was sleeping in the back.
Yeah, but what's crazy is, so during these like 2 hours, we're Googling dealerships and, no place is going to be open because the next day was Monday, Memorial Day. And we're like, what are we going to do? And, and then we checked appointments and the next available was Thursday. And we're like, but we're supposed to be in Seattle on Tuesday night.
And I was going to fly Kimberly to Seattle ahead because you can work and I can figure it out while I'm on the road and I'll get the car and I'll meet you there. It was a thing for a minute. And then we just filled it full of coolant. Everything's been fine since.
And then it was so crazy, too, because I was meeting a dear childhood friend in Denver for breakfast that morning. And then I had 10 a.m. tickets to the Denver Art Museum to see this beautiful exhibit, Hollywood to Paris, which was all about, what's his name?
Gregory Peck and his wife.
Veronique.
Veronique. Okay.
Veronique. To see, I don't know why I can never remember his name. I always want to say Clark Kent, and that's so not right.
Well, you keep wanting to say Clark Gable, but
and Clark Gable.
But it's not
come up with all sorts of
Gregory Peck.
Okay, Gregory Peck.
Most famously, Atticus Finch.
Yes.
In To Kill a Mockingbird.
And I have a photo of the dress that she wore when he won the award and like them walking into the Oscars. So anyway, it was this crazy gorgeous exhibit. And, I was going to be so sad if we weren't able to make it, but of course, understood. Car issues happen. But who knew? We just needed coolant. Meanwhile, we thought we had taken care of it in Oklahoma, but apparently we needed way more than we received.
I think my working theory is they poured undiluted coolant into my thing, and that wasn't going through the system. I needed 50-50. I needed water too.
Well, one thing we haven't covered is too, like, okay, where are we going and where are we staying? And what we did is we chose 3 cities on the West Coast where like 2 where you have family, 1 where you have a lot of friends, and they're just kind of the 3 that we love to hit. Seattle, Portland, where we are now, and the Bay Area. And then for that additional week, kind of that was for my birthday, we're staying in this like tiny, beautiful, sweet little cabin in the woods, basically.
One of the California coastal towns in, I believe, Mendocino County. And if it's not Mendocino, it's Sonoma. It's right around the border there.
Yeah, that has a beautiful bathtub, which is like my thing.
And in the Redwoods, which is another one of your favorites.
Which is my thing.
Yeah.
So and so what's funny is even on the drive to, I guess from Denver to Seattle, I'm Googling like Portland jazz clubs, like all this sort of stuff, trying to find like cool places for us to go.
In the middle of Wyoming.
Yeah.
Like the Grand Tetons are over our left shoulder and she is like just smoking the internet on her phone, trying to find all these things. And she found amazing stuff. I was so excited.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where you're like, who goes on a trip and doesn't have this stuff planned? But it really was somewhat a spontaneous decision.
For us, it was, for sure.
It was. And it's one of those things, too, where you're like, oh, well, we'll just kind of figure things out as we go. Like tonight, while I was working, you found this great vegan restaurant.
The greatest vegan restaurant in the history of vegan food, as far as I'm concerned.
It's just kind of fun.
It was, yeah. And it goes against our planning ways. So it's kind of nice to do that. But that's one of the benefits of Thank You Science, this post-vaccinated world of ours, is that we can start to do things like this. And I also want to say for the record that we are very fortunate, we are very privileged that we're able to pull this off because you have a job and I have a job that allows us to work remotely. And so it's worth saying that too.
Absolutely. And, to be able to take our sweet little disabled dogs and
Yes.
we push them around in a stroller. And almost every place we've gone to, we've been able to take them. There's only one place. Oh, okay. Yeah. The Pink Door, which was this very cool place in Seattle that literally had a pink door and used to do burlesque and all sorts of cool things there. But chandeliers, like just really gorgeous. And we didn't know if we'd be sitting inside or outside. And to sit outside, you have to go through the inside. So we didn't even ask if we could bring dogs there.
I wouldn't have been surprised if they would have let us when all is said and done.
Totally. Because so many places have let us.
Seattle was particularally
so dog friendly.
And Portland is it to a certain degree, but Portland is a little more shut than Seattle was marginally so. But we've been making it work. It's been lovely.
But to be able to take the dogs, and just kind of like push them around in the stroller and take them everywhere has just been a treat.
Yeah.
And they're crashed right now next to us because we made them walk back like 2 blocks.
2 whole blocks. Downhill mostly too.
Downhill. They're like exhausted. They're going to sleep hard.
Yeah, but we were really fortunate. Our Seattle place, after driving 3,300 miles, almost on the button to get there, and we walk in, and the backyard was really nice, and that was a real nice thing to be able to let the dogs off the leash.
Yes.
And then I kind of walk a little bit to the left, towards the left-hand side of the backyard, and just perfectly framed was the Space Needle just sitting there, and I was like, that just was such a nice thing to have, just this visual thing. After seeing, we saw Mount Rainier as we came in, and we saw beautiful stuff coming in through Eastern Washington.
Yes.
But to have that be like sort of the finish line of that really long, all that work we put into it, it was so nice. And then Seattle just really treated us well, and got to see my cousin and I call them my nephew and my niece, but I guess they're technically first cousins once removed, which does not roll off the tongue at all. And I've been told I'm Uncle Tim, so that's all good.
That works.
Yeah, but it was really fun. We had a really nice time there, and got to know Queen Anne a little bit better, which was fun.
Adorable, absolutely adorable. And what was so great is we actually got there a little earlier than we expected because Tim's a rock star and drove the whole freaking way. Woo! And but so I was like, oh my gosh, I think I can make my ballet class.
Yes.
Because I've got like a favorite teacher, and I totally wasn't expecting to be able to make this class. So I like signed up for it 2 or 3 hours in advance. I was like, let's do this. And we got there, say like 4:15, and the class was at 7:30 Eastern, so 4:30. So we unpacked the car, and I like hopped right into ballet.
That was after driving straight from Boise, Idaho, having slept the night in a
camper car.
In the micro camper, in the back of that, in a rest stop. I mean, so it was it's been aggressive, but it was so fun, and it worked out. Other than the coolant issue,
right,
and that only set us back a couple of hours, and we made it up actually that day. So like we were on schedule at that point. But it's reminiscent of the big book RV tour from many years ago,
2013.
But it's different in the fact that rather than going short distances and spending only a very little bit of time in places, instead now we're spending what feels like a luxurious amount of time, a week-ish, in each of these places, and it's just really nice. And this is the part where we earn back all of the crazy driving, because we only have to drive a few hours between Seattle and Portland, and then later in the week we're going to split up the drive, and we didn't even talk about this. We're going to be camping in the Avenue of the Giants.
Oh, my favorite, absolute favorite.
If you've ever seen any car commercial with redwoods in it, it's that road, and we're spending 2 nights there, and that will be amazing. It's a campground we've stayed at before. I biked through it many times, and Kimberly's been to it at least once, right? So that'll be great. And then Oakland for over a week in the Oakland Hills, which should be, I've never stayed there. It looks like it looks like a cool place that we're at. And then, as Kimberly mentioned, the California coast. So much good stuff to come. It's very exciting.
Yeah, it is fun. And really, our schedule hasn't shifted at all, meaning like we have the same schedule and, that we would have back in DC. Mm-hmm. But it's just, I'm done earlier, because I usually will see clients till say 7:30. So now I'm done at say 4:30, 5:30, and I have an entire evening. And then my ballet classes, instead of happening say at 11 a.m., they're happening at like 8 a.m., right? Which is nice because you just kick the day off sooner.
Yeah.
It actually has felt quite good. The one thing that I'd say that's just been a little challenging is, there hasn't been kind of the time or space that I thought I'd have, because I was like, I'm going to get so much writing done, so much reading. I brought all this stuff. And I've been struggling a little bit just to keep my head above water of like handling, just things that I would be doing back home in the mornings that I'm now instead doing my ballet or seeing clients, right? So like earlier than I typically would be. So even though everything's just time shifted a little bit, it's still been a little tricky to wrap my head around, but it's only been a week, not even a week.
And every night's a date night too. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
That's the replacement is
true.
the time that we're getting to spend together in the evenings. And,
right.
And so,
which is fun,
which is nice, but it does put a little bit of extra pressure on that. But it is kind of fun. I'm working West Coast hours to match, so that ends up working out for me. And I've got my normal stuff that I do, my lawyer stuff, and it's worked out really, really well.
Yeah. So anyway, we just wanted to give you a peek into this experience. And two, I'll be sharing some tips, over on the blog on, okay, how do you have tranquil travel? I mean, it's funny, fitting everything into that car. Like I have one suitcase, and it's a regular size suitcase actually that goes in an overhead compartment. So it's not big. And the whole left side is 21 pieces of my clothing line, TDJ, right? And then on the other side is like a variety of like all my powders that I love to consume. It was like my ballet stuff, a curling iron, just some like random things, right? So that was on the right side. And then I have a whole bag that's filled with toiletries because I love my serums and moisturizers. And then I have a bag with shoes because I brought like boots, which is so good because it's been quite chilly. And, then like flip-flops and slippers and some clogs, which they're open toe clogs. I don't know if I'll ever get to wear those.
I don't think so.
Maybe with like socks.
Maybe in the desert on the way back.
Maybe in the desert. Yeah. So as I'm crawling out of the camper car. And, and then, one bag that has, like books and, like it's kind of like my little traveling office. So that's not much, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, my purse, and that has like my daybook and my laptop and pens and all of that. It's funny. I was telling Tim, it took me longer to decide which pens, P-E-N-S, pens, to bring than like one should possibly be spending like mental energy on. But, it's just fun to see like really, I mean, for many weeks of travel, what little you need. And of course, we've got quite a bit of stuff for the dogs.
Yep. Stuff for the dogs, the stroller, which goes on the bike rack in the back.
Yep.
Which has been very handy. That was the extra thing that we needed.
Yes.
And I've got my little folding bike, which I've ridden in both Seattle and in Portland so far, and will definitely be doing in all of the places that we're at. So that's fun.
And dog beds and, like big fluffy pink dog beds.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. Oh, and then of course I have to travel with my 2 favorite pillows that have satin pillowcases.
We have more pillows than we need, just honestly.
You can never have too many pillows.
We had a lot of pillows.
You brought 1 pillow, and then I brought Gizzy's pillow because he has a favorite pillow. So I have 3 pillows and a big pink fluffy blanket. So that's a lot, really, but still so little to have those creature comforts. Candles, we brought candles.
Somehow we fit this all in a 2011 Buick LaCrosse. Somehow, by the way, not a great car. Just mentioning that. Very small, very, very short, no headroom. Just thought I'd mention.
Yeah, no headroom at all. And I'm bumping my knees constantly, and I'm not like a tall person. So
it's not designed well.
Not
a great design.
But 2011.
But it is definitely working for us.
It is, especially with coolant.
Yeah.
So, I hope that you guys will join. I'm going to be in Oakland when I'm hosting TDJ Live, which is happening on Father's Day, June 20th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So please join me for that. It's always a treat to be with you seasonally. And then, of course, the next thing that's happening is our virtual retreat on July 10th, which is a Saturday. And that's a 3-hour event, which is going to be really lovely to do a lot of reflection about life mid-year and all the changes happening and what we want to keep, what we want to let go of, etc. So come out for those. Would love to have you. And you can find links to all of this in the show notes, which will be found at KimberlyWilson.com/544. Also, a heads up that next Tuesday, I'm going to be chatting with the author of Get Over, I Got It, which is our book club pick of the month. And stay tuned for details on that. You'll find that, of course, over on the blog and Instagram and all that good stuff. So would love to have you join. It'll be a 30-minute chat at 11:30 a.m. next Tuesday, the 15th. And so it'll be fun to hear from her again. You probably heard her on the podcast a couple months ago, but she's just an absolute delight. And I hope you are enjoying the book. Oh, one other fun thing that we did is, you were out. What were you doing? Oh, you went to the museum.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I went to Mopop in Seattle and saw the Nirvana exhibit, the Pearl Jam exhibit. I went to see a Disney costume exhibit. It was very cool.
Very cool. And during that, I had Kimberly of Journal Breeze host a 2-hour private workshop for the TDJ Passholder Collective. And that was so much fun because she taught us oh my gosh, how to make pockets and tucks and all these things in your art journal, things that I just had either forgotten about or had never thought about. So it was so much fun. So that was a really cool thing. And I'll share some more photos of what I created and what some other people created because I saw a couple of people the next day post I can't stop. I'm obsessed. So it's fun. It's fun to play and explore and be able to do these things from afar. So thank you as always for tuning in. You can find all sorts of fun things over in the show notes and at KimberlyWilson.com. And I hope you have a delightful, delicious week. And next week, you're going to be hearing from Naz, who wrote this beautiful book on mindfulness and used to work with Steve Jobs. So stay tuned for that. Have a great week.